you're also going to tell me to speak slowly, right?
No, just
Okay, well, it's a privilege to be with you, and in 7 minutes to try to present to you some of my research over the last year. I'm currently on a sabbatical leave, and I'm researching the topic of character and virtue in theological education. What you see projected here on the board is a manifesto that I've produced in the course of my research. It's a draft manifesto. If you want to read it thoroughly, because we're going to run through it, you can find it on my blog. My blog is charactereducation.blog. I'd love for you to follow the blog, also to contribute your personal points of view, your critical thoughts on my work, and hopefully it will be published later this year, if not next year. So I thought the best way to do this was going to be to run through the actual manifesto to show you some of the key points of some of my thinking. Each one would deserve a lot more than what I'm able to give in the remaining 5.5 minutes. So first of all, the convictions that shape the manifesto, and then 6 statements with a series of subpoints in the manifesto, the draft manifesto itself. First conviction: there are universal virtues that contribute to human flourishing that are necessary for a healthy society and a faithful church. 2, virtue can be taught, and character can intentionally be formed through adult education as a powerful agent of individual and social change. 3, character and virtue education are firmly grounded in Christian theology and have characterized much of the history both of higher education and of theological education. 4, contemporary social and educational contexts are calling for a renewal in the tradition of character and virtue. And it is very interesting to follow what is happening in education and in higher education. There is a returning discourse to virtue and character, moving away from the academic paradigm, from the professional paradigm, and back into the personal humanistic paradigm. Theological education, I am convinced, is strategically poised better than any other discipline in the university to contribute to this renewal. Academic engagement, development of professional skills, and practices of spiritual formation have taken precedence in Christian theological education, marginalizing what has been one of its main features historically, which is character and virtue education. Character and virtue education can revitalize, I believe, the future of global theological education once practical challenges and theoretical objections have been addressed. For deep change to happen, it is necessary to explicitly focus on theoretical and practical work in character and virtue education. This cannot simply be an add-on to an existing program. This tends to be an elephant in the room of our theological education. So here then are the 6 statements at the basis of my thinking and my draft manifesto that I'd love to get your feedback on. First, the aims of character and virtue education should be central in global Christian theological education. My subpoints here are: first, that character and virtue education should not be sought to the exclusion of traditional academic engagement, professional training, and spiritual formation, but should rise from where they are now in the margins to the center of our practice. 2, character and virtue education should be sought within the diversity of Christian traditions. And I won't enlarge on this, I won't even read the paragraph that's under that. Just take it as read. There are many Christian traditions that have a different take on what character education can look like, and we must acknowledge that and build it into what we do. 3, character and virtue education should be both prescriptive and non-prescriptive, providing a central hub of principles and standards while at the same time allowing for difference and subjectivity. Character and virtue education must remain a blunt tool. And fourthly, character and virtue education should require a radical re-envisioning of theological education from the center to the periphery. This is not beauty surgery. This is deep heart surgery we're looking at. Second statement: the impact of theological education should be seen through character and virtue education. We believe in impact. What is the impact we are having in church and society through theological education? The impact of theological education is incomplete, I state, without the formation of graduates of character and virtue. If this is not explicitly done through our programs, we have not completed our potential in terms of impact. 2, the impact of theological education should correspond to the needs of society and the church. The church is not asking for more high-level theological engagement. It is not even necessarily asking for more practical skills. The problems that you face in your churches, many of them have to do with the character and the virtue of your leaders. And it is the same in democratic societies. Democracy is held on the virtue of its citizens. And we as theological educators can provide an injection of exactly that kind of citizens like no one else. 3, the impact of theological education needs to be realistic. We need to aim not low, not high. We need to aim right, and that needs to be impact. Those are my 3 statements on substatements on impact. 3, main statement. A new vision of character and virtue in theological education should be worked out and justified. There is work for us to do. And I've outlined 7, I believe, areas of work that need to be done in character and virtue education. First is historical work. We need to reappropriate the tradition of character and virtue education. That is part of our heritage. It is part of our traditions. It has been left to the side. 2, we need theological work to ground the concepts and practices of character and virtue education within Christian theology. And there are subpoints there on exactly what that entails. Thirdly, we need philosophical work to be done to develop theoretical frameworks for the implementation, evaluation, and operationalization of character and virtue education. We need an educational framework to hold this in. Fourthly, lexical work is needed to reclaim, understand, and make popular a vocabulary of virtue that is at the same time clear and necessarily ambiguous. And you can read the substatement to understand what I'm getting at there. We simply don't have the words. If we don't have the words, we don't have the concepts. If we don't have the concepts, we don't have the practice. And if we don't have the practice, we fail in our intentions as theological educators. It all starts with words. 5, contextual work is needed to support the claim that character and virtue education should be a universal feature of theological education across the world. Although I believe there are some virtues that are universal to all cultures or supercultural, there are other virtues and character features that are embedded and contextual, and we need to unpack that. 6, interdisciplinary work is needed to draw from a vast body of literature, research, and practice that relates and enriches character and virtue education. Moral ethics, virtue epistemology, positive psychology, democracy, political philosophy, sociology are all engaging with character and virtue. 7, apologetic work is needed both to address objections and to present an innovative case for Christianity. 2 areas here in apologetic. The first is there's some objections to character and virtue education, and we need to address those. But the second, what have I got, 60 seconds?
Just less than that.
Okay. The second area, and allow me, this is a crucial point, I believe that character and virtue education through theological education can present a new dimension of apologetics for the relevance of Christianity in our society. If we can tell society, why do you exist, and why should we give you taxpayer money to support your theological colleges, and we can say, look at the virtues of the graduates of virtue and character that we are injecting into our democracy. That is an apologetic for the Christian faith.
This is a very good point to finish.
Okay? There's an action plan to the community that you can read, an action plan to actually put this into practice in theological colleges, 4 points there, and then there's also an action plan for students, supporters, and stakeholders. Visit my blog, you can see the rest of that. And just in case you're wondering what the JEDPD means, we're all familiar with the documentary hypothesis, JEDP. I'm wondering, should we have more JPTC, which is the 4 cardinal virtues of justice, temperance, prudence, and courage.
I will advise nobody to attempt what Marvin has done. It is only him who can speak with this speed, and you can still follow him.
I was speaking slowly.
He was trying best.